When everything seemed perfect, a child began to fall silent. But someone saw what no one else wanted to see and chose to confront the silence before it was too late. Rachel observed the impressive houses of Eastover through the car window, with their well-maintained gardens and elegant facades. She took a deep breath. Every inch of that neighborhood represented years of effort, sleepless nights, and difficult choices. She parked in front of the real estate office and adjusted the rear-view mirror to check her appearance. "Mommy, are we here?" Chloe asked from the back seat, clutching the cloth doll she hadn't let go of since she was 3. "Yes, sweetheart, remember what we talked about? Mommy is going to sign some important papers, and then we'll go see our new house." The little girl's eyes sparkled. At just 6 years old, Chloe had a surprising understanding of the difficulties they had faced. Small daily gestures showed her maturity. She made her own bed without being asked, sorted clothes for the laundry, and never complained when they had pasta for dinner for the 3rd time in a week, because money was tight. Rachel adjusted her blazer before getting out of the car. She had bought the piece on sale, but nobody needed to know that. Since she had gotten the promotion to manager at the advertising agency, her life had begun to change. The second job as a waitress on weekends became unnecessary. Finally, she could dedicate Sundays to her daughter without the guilt of always being exhausted. She took Chloe by the hand, and they entered the real estate office. The cold air conditioning contrasted with Charlotte's typical January heat. A man stood up as soon as he saw them, with a broad smile and impeccable posture. "Ms. Rachel Sanders, I'm Oliver Mitchell, contract manager. We spoke on the phone." He extended his hand, and Rachel noticed the sophisticated watch on his wrist. The discreet cologne and well-tailored suit indicated someone familiar with luxury. For a moment she felt out of place. "Nice to meet you in person. This is my daughter, Chloe." Oliver crouched down to be at the girl's height, a gesture that positively surprised Rachel. "Hello, Chloe. Your mom told me you like gardens. The house you're going to rent has a perfect space for a small vegetable patch. What do you think about that?" Chloe smiled shyly, pressing the doll tighter against her chest. She murmured an almost inaudible "thank you" and partially hid behind her mother. While signing the documents, Rachel couldn't help but notice how Oliver conducted everything with efficiency and cordiality. There wasn't that look of doubt she usually received when she mentioned being a single mother. No questions about additional guarantees or veiled comments about her ability to afford the rent on a property of that standard. "All done. Welcome to your new home," he said, handing over the keys. "If you don't mind, I'd like to accompany you. It's company policy to ensure everything is in order upon delivery." In the car, following Oliver's vehicle, Rachel allowed herself a moment of pride. She had left the Charlotte suburbs where she had grown up hearing that girls like her from simple families rarely went far. She had gotten pregnant at 19, still in her first year of college, and when Paul, Chloe's father, disappeared upon learning of the pregnancy, everyone bet she would give up her studies. But Rachel did just the opposite. She graduated with distinction, even attending classes with Chloe asleep in her lap. She started as a junior assistant at the agency, and in 5 years became the youngest manager in the company's history. Each achievement was a silent proof of her determination. The house exceeded expectations. 2 spacious bedrooms, a modern kitchen, a living room with high ceilings, and, as promised, a backyard that made Chloe gasp. "Look, Mommy, can I plant sunflowers here?" "Of course, sweetheart, this space is ours now." Oliver observed the scene with a discreet smile. "You made an excellent deal. This neighborhood is rapidly appreciating in value." "Please, call me Rachel." "Rachel," he repeated, as if savoring each syllable. "You know, it's not common to see someone so young acquiring a property of this standard, especially—" he hesitated. "Especially a single mother," she completed, already accustomed to that type of observation. "Especially someone so determined," he corrected. "I know your professional trajectory. Your agency is a client of the bank where I previously worked. Your reputation in the market is admirable." Rachel hadn't expected that recognition. She felt her face warm slightly. "Well, I have a daughter to raise. I can't afford to fail." "And you won't," he assured her, with a conviction that caught her by surprise. After Oliver left, promising to personally resolve any issues that might arise with the property, Rachel and Chloe explored every corner of their new house. In the girls' room, with walls in a soft shade of green, Rachel helped her daughter organize her few toys. "Mommy, is that man going to live with us?" The innocent question made Rachel laugh. "No, dear. He just works at the real estate office." "He looks like a prince from those movies," Chloe commented, organizing her small collection of children's books. "Does he?" Rachel smiled, catching herself thinking that Oliver really did have a movie star air about him. The following week, the routine began to establish itself. Chloe was enrolled in the nearby school, while Rachel returned to work at the agency. The change of address brought new challenges. The traffic was different, schedules needed to be adjusted, and the need arose for someone to pick up Chloe from school on days when Rachel had planning meetings. That's when the phone rang, exactly at 7:30 p.m., while they were having dinner. "Rachel, it's Oliver Mitchell. I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all. Is there a problem with the house?" No, actually I'm calling for another reason. I know it may seem sudden, but I'd like to invite you for a coffee, just to talk." Rachel hesitated, looking at Chloe, who was distractedly eating her mashed potatoes. She began, uncertain. "I understand if you prefer to decline. It's really not conventional, but—" He paused. "Let's say I was impressed by your story, and I believe determined people should get to know each other better." There was something in his voice, a mixture of confidence and vulnerability that intrigued her. "All right, I accept the coffee, but I need to be clear. My daughter always comes first." "I wouldn't expect anything different," he replied, and Rachel could swear she could feel his smile on the other end of the line. She hung up the phone with a strange sensation. She couldn't remember the last time someone had invited her out. Her days were divided between work and Chloe, with no space for romantic encounters. She looked at her daughter, who was now drawing at the table, focused. "Chloe, what would you think if Mommy went out for coffee with a friend this weekend?" The girl raised her eyes from the drawing. "Can I stay with Aunt Emma?" Emma, her neighbor from the old apartment, was the only person Rachel trusted to leave Chloe with. With the move, they would need to rethink that dynamic. "We'll see, sweetheart. Maybe she can come here." That night, lying in her new bed, Rachel reflected on how her life was changing. The new house, the elegant neighborhood, the possibility of a date. Everything seemed to indicate that finally, after years of constant struggle, the universe was beginning to conspire in her favor. What she didn't know was that the universe sometimes offers poisoned gifts, and that not all that glitters is gold, and that her biggest battle was yet to come. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. The cafe chosen by Oliver was in Dilworth, one of the most charming neighborhoods in Charlotte. Rachel arrived punctually at 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, after leaving Chloe with Emma, who kindly agreed to make the trip to the new house. Wearing a simple but elegant dress, she felt observed as she entered the establishment. It was one of those places where the local elite gathered, with dark wooden tables, soft lighting, and a selection of imported coffees that cost what she used to spend on a week of groceries. Oliver was already waiting for her. He stood up with a smile when he saw her, pulling out the chair for her to sit. The chivalrous gesture, so rare these days, made her smile shyly. "You look stunning," he commented after the waiter walked away with their orders. "Red suits you." "Thank you. I confess I was a little nervous about coming. It's been a while since I've gone out like this. Because of your daughter. Chloe is my priority, and work occupies practically all the remaining time." Oliver nodded, understanding. "I admire that. Nowadays, many people completely outsource the raising of their children." The conversation flowed naturally. They discovered common interests. Both enjoyed suspense films, had the same musical taste, and shared the dream of visiting Tuscany. Oliver told her about his professional trajectory. Graduated in business administration from UNC, he built a career in the real estate market, after a few years in the banking sector. Now at 38, he was a minority partner in the real estate agency where he worked. "And how is Chloe adapting to the new house?" he asked, seeming genuinely interested. Very well. She's already made friends with a neighbor of the same age and is excited about the new school. Chloe has always been resilient. Sometimes I think she was born with a wisdom that I'm still trying to acquire. Children have that incredible capacity for adaptation. You know, I have an 8-year-old nephew. Gabriel. Maybe one day we could organize something for them to meet. The mention of future plans made Rachel feel a slight flutter in her stomach. It was strange how, in just a few hours of conversation, Oliver had already won her sympathy. There was something about him. Perhaps the way he listened attentively, or how he spoke of his achievements without arrogance, that made her feel comfortable. When they left the cafe, it was already early evening. Oliver suggested a walk through Freedom Park, which was nearby. The park was illuminated, and several families were enjoying the pleasant late afternoon. Chloe would love it here, Rachel commented, observing the colorful paddle boats on the lake. We can bring her here any day, Oliver responded naturally, as if he already considered it normal to include Chloe in his plans. Rachel hesitated for a moment. She was used to being cautious, especially when it came to her daughter. Paul, Chloe's father, had disappeared as soon as he learned of the pregnancy, leaving her with deep fears about trusting men. But Oliver seemed different, stable, mature, respectful. She would like that, she finally answered, allowing herself to imagine the possibility. On the way back, Oliver was a perfect gentleman. He opened the car door, asked if she was comfortable with the air conditioning temperature, drove respecting all speed limits, small gestures that didn't go unnoticed by Rachel. When she arrived home, Emma received her with a mischievous smile. "So, how was it?" she asked, as soon as Oliver said goodbye and left. "It was surprisingly good," Rachel admitted, while checking on Chloe. The girl was sleeping peacefully in her bed, hugging her cloth doll. "He seems like a decent man," Emma commented. "And he's clearly interested. He looks at you as if you were a rare treasure." "Do you really think so? Sometimes I think I've been out of the market for so long that I've forgotten how this works." "Believe me, friend, that man is completely enchanted." In the following weeks, meetings with Oliver became frequent. Coffee after work, quick lunches, and eventually programs that included Chloe. As promised, he took her paddle boating in Freedom Park. He brought children's books specially selected for the girls' taste, and even sunflower seeds for them to plant together in the garden. Chloe, initially shy, began to open up to him. Oliver had a natural ability to communicate with children. He spoke without infantilizing, listened with genuine attention, and respected their boundaries. "Mommy," Uncle Oliver said, "he's going to teach me to ride a bike without training wheels." "Next Sunday," Chloe told excitedly after one of the outings. "Really? And do you want to learn?" "Yes. He said that stumbling is part of learning, but that he'll always be nearby to catch me if I fall." The phrase touched Rachel deeply. It was exactly what she wanted. Someone who understood that stumbles happen, but who was willing to stay close, offering support without smothering. On an especially pleasant March evening, after dinner at the new house, a dinner prepared by Oliver, who revealed himself to be an excellent cook, he made a proposal that caught her by surprise. "Rachel, I know it might seem precipitous, but I'd like to help you buy this house." She almost choked on her wine. "What do you mean?" "I have some investments that are yielding well. I can make an interest-free loan for you to make the down payment, and you can pay me back when you can." "Oliver, that's a lot of money. I can't accept." "It's not a gift, it's an investment. In both of you." He took her hand across the table. "Rachel, in the last 2 months, you and Chloe have brought a joy to my life that I didn't even know was missing. I know it's early, but I'm sure of my feelings." Rachel's heart accelerated. A part of her wanted to accept immediately. The security of owning a home in a safe neighborhood was everything she had always dreamed of for Chloe. But another part, the one formed by years of forced independence, hesitated. "I need to think," she finally answered. "It's an important decision." "Of course, no pressure," he assured her, with that tranquil smile that had already become familiar. That night, after Oliver left and Chloe fell asleep, Rachel called Emma. "He offered money for me to buy the house." "Wow, and are you going to accept?" "I don't know. It's a big deal, Emma. What if things don't work out between us? I'll be in debt, not to mention the emotional impact on Chloe. She's already getting attached to him. It really is a risk, Emma pondered. But Rachel, at some point you'll have to trust again. And from what I've seen, Oliver seems to be the right guy. The conversation with Emma didn't resolve her doubts, but it helped organize her thoughts. The next morning, while having coffee, Rachel realized something important. Her fear wasn't about the money itself, but about what it represented. Accepting Oliver's help meant opening a door that had been locked for a long time. The possibility of trusting, of sharing responsibilities, of not being alone. The routine in the rented house continued, but with a new dynamic. Oliver began to frequent the place with more assiduity. He brought small gifts for Chloe, nothing ostentatious, always something meaningful, like a special book or an educational game. For Rachel, sometimes he appeared with flowers, other times with a wine for them to enjoy after Chloe went to sleep. The relationship evolved naturally. Before she knew it, Oliver already had a drawer in Rachel's room and some clothes in the closet. Chloe began to refer to him as Uncle Ollie and ran excitedly to the door when she heard his car park. It was during this period that Rachel noticed a logistical challenge. With her new position at the agency, she often needed to stay late at work. Chloe had changed schools, and the school transport dropped her off at home at 4 in the afternoon. Even with the neighbor offering to keep an eye on her, Rachel didn't feel comfortable with the situation. "You need a babysitter," Oliver suggested during dinner. "Someone trustworthy who can stay with Chloe in the afternoon." "Babysitters are expensive." "I can help with that too," he offered naturally. This time Rachel didn't hesitate as much. In recent weeks, she had witnessed Oliver's generosity in small and large gestures. And more importantly, she had seen how he treated Chloe with genuine respect and affection. "All right, but I insist on participating in the selection. I want someone who really connects with Chloe." Oliver smiled, satisfied. "Of course. Actually, I have a suggestion. The daughter of a former colleague is looking for a job while finishing her education degree. From what I know, she has excellent references." Thus, a week later, Casey appeared for the interview. She was a 23-year-old young woman with curly hair tied in an unpretentious ponytail and attentive eyes that seemed to assess everything around her. Her voice was calm and melodious, the type of voice that naturally calms children. "So, Casey, have you worked with children Chloe's age before?" Rachel asked, observing how the young woman carried herself. "Yes, I did an internship at a children's school for 2 years. I worked mainly with children between 5 and 7 years old." The resume was impeccable, and the references, when checked, didn't spare compliments. But what really convinced Rachel was the way Chloe reacted upon meeting her. The girl, usually reserved, with strangers, seemed comfortable in Casey's presence almost immediately. "Do you like to draw?" Casey asked Chloe, noticing the open drawing pad on the table. "I like it. Do you want to see what I made?" Without waiting for an answer, Chloe pulled Casey by the hand to her small desk, where several drawings were scattered. The naturalness of that interaction was the final seal of approval. Casey was hired to pick up Chloe from school and stay with her until Rachel arrived from work. Occasionally, when Rachel had evening commitments, Casey would also stay. The arrangement seemed perfect. What Rachel didn't imagine was that this young babysitter, with her observant look and her sharp sensitivity, would be the first to notice the small cracks in the perfect facade that Oliver had so carefully constructed. The first week of Casey as a babysitter went by without major events. Chloe showed herself increasingly at ease with her presence, sharing stories from school and asking for help with homework. Rachel, in turn, felt relieved to have found someone she could trust to take care of her daughter. On a Friday afternoon, while Casey was playing with Play-Doh with Chloe at the kitchen table, Oliver arrived earlier than usual. He hadn't warned that he was coming. He entered using the key that Rachel had given him weeks before, depositing shopping bags on the counter. "Good afternoon," he greeted with his usual impeccable smile. "I brought ingredients for a special dinner. I thought I'd surprise Rachel." Casey noticed something subtle. Chloe, who seconds before was happily molding a green giraffe with Play-Doh, immediately straightened her posture. Her little hands, previously agile and creative, became rigid on the table. "Hello, Mr. Oliver," Casey responded politely. "Rachel mentioned she would arrive around 7 today." "Perfect. Enough time to prepare something special," he approached. Chloe stroking her hair. "And how was your day, Princess?" "It was good," the girl responded in a low voice, looking at the Play-Doh, not at him. Casey noticed the change in the child's behavior, but didn't comment. Instead, she offered to help with dinner while continuing to supervise Chloe. "No need," Oliver declined politely. "I prefer to cook alone. It's almost therapeutic. You know, but I appreciate the offer." While he organized the ingredients, Casey suggested to Chloe that they go play in her room. The girl nodded promptly, gathering her Play-Doh with unusual quickness. In the room, while leafing through a storybook, Casey noticed that Chloe was distracted, frequently looking at the door. "Is everything okay, dear?" Chloe just nodded, hugging the cloth doll she rarely let go of. "You know, if something is bothering you, you can tell me. Sometimes talking about what worries us makes us feel better." The girl hesitated, biting her lower lip. "Aunt Casey, will you stay with me until Mommy comes?" The question, apparently simple, carried a weight that Casey couldn't ignore. "Of course I will. It's my job to stay with you until your mom arrives." Chloe seemed to relax a little, but still kept her eyes fixed on the door. When Rachel arrived around 7:30, dinner was already served. Oliver received her with a kiss and a glass of wine. The delicious smell of mushroom risotto filled the kitchen. "What a wonderful surprise," Rachel commented, delighted with the gesture. She kissed Chloe, who ran to hug her, and thanked Casey. For another day." "Don't you want to stay for dinner with us?" she offered to Casey. Before the babysitter could respond, Oliver intervened. "Actually, I prepared something special for the three of us. A family moment, you understand. But we can set aside a portion for you to take, Casey." The term family didn't go unnoticed by any of the women present. Rachel seemed slightly surprised, but not uncomfortable. Casey, on the other hand, felt an inexplicable chill. "Thank you, but it's not necessary. I have plans with friends tonight," Casey responded politely. "See you Monday, Chloe?" The girl nodded, but didn't smile as usual. The following weekend, Oliver suggested they go to the mall to buy presents for Chloe, who would be turning 7 soon. "She deserves a beautiful party," he commented as they walked between stores. "We can do it in the building's function room. Invite classmates from the new school, neighbors." Rachel smiled, touched by his enthusiasm. "Chloe has never had a big party. We usually do something simple, just the two of us and Emma. This year will be different. Let me participate, please." How? Could she refuse such a request? Oliver seemed genuinely interested in Chloe's well-being. In a few months, he had become a constant presence in their lives, helpful, affectionate, stable. The financial aid proposal for buying the house was still standing, and Rachel finally felt ready to accept. The relationship was solid. Chloe seemed to be adapting to the new family dynamic, and she, for the first time in a long time, didn't feel alone carrying the world on her shoulders. On Monday, while Chloe was taking a bath, Casey organized the school materials for the next day. That's when she noticed a drawing partially hidden under the math notebook. It showed 3 figures, a woman with curly hair like hers, a small girl, and a larger male figure, distant from the other 2, with what appeared to be exaggeratedly large hands and a strange, almost forced smile. Casey kept the image in her memory, but didn't comment on anything. Children often express their perceptions and emotions through drawings, and she didn't want to jump to conclusions. In the days that followed, however, she began to notice subtle patterns in Chloe's behavior. The girl, normally talkative and curious, became silent and withdrawn when Oliver was present. During play, she frequently created stories where princesses needed to hide from authority figures, and, most notably, she began to ask to sleep with the light on, something she had never done before. On a Wednesday, while helping Chloe with homework, Casey decided to approach the subject delicately. "Chloe, remember that drawing you made? With 3 people?" The girl raised her eyes, suddenly alert. "Who are the people in the drawing?" Chloe hesitated, twirling the pencil between her fingers. You, me, and Uncle Ollie. I see. And why is Uncle Oliver far from us in the drawing? Because, she paused, looking at the door as if checking if they were really alone, because sometimes he says things that scare me. Casey's heart accelerated. What kind of things, dear? He said that children who don't obey don't deserve to have mothers. And that, her voice diminished to almost a whisper. If I tell something to Mommy, she'll be sad and go away, just like my dad did. Casey felt a knot in her throat. She kept her expression calm, despite the internal alarm that was sounding. Chloe, has Uncle Oliver ever done anything that hurt you or made you uncomfortable? The girl shook her head negatively. He just says things. And sometimes, when Mommy isn't looking, he squeezes my arm very hard and smiles in a strange way. At that moment, Casey knew she needed to observe more carefully. She had no concrete evidence of anything beyond a child's discomfort, but her instinct told her that something was wrong in the dynamic that was forming in that house. In the following weeks, preparations for Chloe's birthday party took over the routine. Oliver, as promised, didn't economize. He hired princess-themed decorations, a complete children's buffet, recreational staff, and even a small magic show. Rachel, initially concerned about the expenses, ended up yielding to his enthusiasm. It's the first birthday that we can really celebrate properly, he argued. Chloe deserves this, and you deserve to see your daughter happy. The party was a success. Chloe, dressed in a beautiful blue dress chosen by Oliver, looked like a real princess. Children from the new school attended in large numbers, as well as some neighbors with children of the same age. For the first time, Rachel felt part of that world, the world of structured families, of mothers who didn't need to count coins, to buy presents, of children who grew up in safe and privileged environments. During the party, Casey noticed something that bothered her. While they were cutting the cake, Oliver made a point of taking several photos, organizing Chloe and Rachel in different poses. At a certain moment, Chloe spilled a little soda on her new dress. Nothing serious, just a small stain on the hem. Oliver, smiling for the cameras, leaned in and whispered something in the girl's ear. Her smile instantly disappeared, replaced by an expression of alarm. Minutes later, when Casey accompanied Chloe to the bathroom to clean the stain, the girl was trembling. What's wrong, Chloe? Are you cold? Uncle Ollie said I ruined everything. That Mommy spent a lot of money on this dress, and that I don't deserve pretty things if I don't know how to take care of them. Casey felt a wave of indignation. Chloe, accidents happen. Your mum knows that, and I'm sure she's not upset about the little stain. But Uncle Ollie said that... Uncle Oliver is wrong, Casey interrupted, firm but gentle. Let's clean this up and go back to the party. It's your birthday, you should be having fun. Upon returning, Casey looked for Rachel. She was radiant, talking with other mothers, clearly happy to see Chloe integrated into the new social circle. Oliver, meanwhile, circulated among the guests like a natural host, charming everyone with his friendliness and attention to detail. The scene seemed perfect. The happy family, the dream house, the wonderful party. But Casey couldn't ignore the feeling that something dark was hiding behind that impeccable facade. 2 days after the party, while tidying up Chloe's room, Casey found the cloth doll, the girl's inseparable companion, hidden inside the dirty clothes basket. She found it strange, as Chloe normally slept hugging the doll. Chloe, I found Lily. Don't you want to keep her? The girl, who was drawing at the small table in the room, raised her eyes with an expression of alarm. Uncle Ollie said that big girls don't need dolls to sleep, that it's for babies. And do you agree with that? Chloe shrugged, returning to her drawing. I don't want to be a baby. You know, Chloe, I'm 23 years old and I still keep a teddy bear that I got when I was little. That doesn't make me less grown up. The girl raised her eyes, surprised. Really? Really? And does your mom know that Uncle Oliver asked you to put Lily away? Chloe shook her head negatively. It's our secret. He said that Mommy would be proud if I grew up fast. That night, after Chloe fell asleep, without the doll, despite Casey's words, the babysitter was thoughtful. The signs were accumulating. Chloe's subtle fear, the secrets imposed by Oliver, the changes in the girl's behavior. None of this was explicitly alarming when viewed in isolation, but the pattern that was forming began to seriously concern her. Did she need to talk to Rachel? But what would she say exactly? Your boyfriend is psychologically manipulating your daughter. Without concrete evidence, it would sound like paranoia, or worse, like jealousy, or an attempt to create problems in their relationship. Casey decided she needed to observe more, document concerning behaviors, and mainly ensure that Chloe knew she could trust her. If her suspicions were correct, and she sincerely hoped they weren't, the girl would need a trusted adult by her side. What Casey didn't know was that her attentive presence had already been noticed by Oliver, and that he wasn't the type of man who tolerated obstacles in his path. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We continue. May arrived with intense rains. Typical of autumn in Charlotte, afternoons at Rachel's house became more intimate, with Chloe and Casey frequently entertained with board games or reading sessions while the rain drummed on the windows. It was during one of these afternoons that Oliver appeared unexpectedly, soaked and visibly irritated. "I forgot my umbrella at the office," he explained, forcing a smile when he noticed Casey observing him. "Chloe, what do you think about watching a movie? I brought that animation you mentioned last week." Chloe, who was putting together a puzzle with Casey, looked hesitantly at the babysitter before responding. "Can we finish the puzzle first, Uncle Ollie?" "We're almost done." Oliver's expression hardened for an instant, so briefly that it would be imperceptible to someone who wasn't attentive, but Casey noticed. "Of course, Princess. I'll take a hot shower in the meantime. When I come back, I want to see this puzzle finished, deal?" He smiled, but his eyes remained cold. As soon as Oliver went upstairs, Chloe accelerated her movements, trying to fit the pieces in a hurry, dropping some in the process. "Calm down, Chloe. We don't need to rush," Casey commented, concerned with the girl's sudden anxiety. "We need to finish before Uncle Ollie comes." "Back," she whispered, her small fingers trembling slightly as she tried to position a particularly difficult piece. "Why?" He said, "We can finish first." Chloe looked toward the stairs, making sure they were alone. "Because he gets angry when he has to wait. But don't tell him I said that, okay?" Casey's stomach contracted. That pattern of secrets, of veiled fear, was becoming increasingly evident. When they finished the puzzle, Oliver was already back, wearing casual clothes and with his hair still damp from the shower. His mood seemed to have improved considerably. "So you finished? How about that movie now, Princess?" Chloe nodded, getting up promptly. Casey noticed how she seemed to calibrate her reactions to please Oliver, neither too enthusiastic nor reluctant, just adequately obedient. "Casey, if you want to leave earlier today, feel free. I'll stay with Chloe until Rachel arrives," Oliver offered, the tone perfectly cordial. "Thank you, but today I need to help Chloe with a science project for tomorrow," Casey responded calmly. "Rachel specifically asked us to make sure everything is in order." A flash of annoyance crossed Oliver's face, but he quickly regained his composure. "Right. Then perhaps we can all watch the movie together?" Casey agreed, although the last thing she wanted was to spend time with Oliver. But she wouldn't leave Chloe alone with him if she could avoid it. During the movie, sitting on the spacious living room sofa, Casey observed how Oliver subtly controlled the experience. He chose where each one would sit, Chloe in the middle, he and Casey at the extremities. He regulated the volume at a level he considered appropriate, ignoring when Chloe asked to turn it up during a scene with music. He commented on the inappropriate clothes of a teenage character, giving Chloe a meaningful look, as if warning her about behavior not to follow. Small things, too subtle to be directly confronted, but which composed a disturbing mosaic of control. When Rachel arrived around 7:30, she found the three apparently involved in a harmonious movie session. Chloe ran to hug her as she always did. "Mommy, we watched The Brave Princess, and guess what? The princess saved the kingdom all by herself without a prince." "Really? What a smart princess," Rachel responded, kissing the top of her daughter's head. "I hope you thanked Uncle Oliver for the movie." "I did, and we also did a puzzle with Aunt Casey." Oliver got up, approaching to kiss Rachel. "Tough day?" he asked, lightly massaging her shoulders. "Exhausting. Presentation for a new client, but we managed to close the contract." "That deserves a celebration. How about we go out for dinner this weekend?" "I know a wonderful restaurant in Atlanta." Rachel hesitated. "And Chloe. I'm sure Casey wouldn't mind staying with her on a Saturday night. Isn't that right, Casey?" Oliver turned to the babysitter, his look making it clear that he expected agreement. "Of course, no problem," Casey responded automatically, although internally she questioned the ease with which Oliver made decisions that affected everyone. That night, after helping Chloe with the science project, a small terrarium that demonstrated the water cycle, Casey was preparing to leave when Oliver approached her at the entrance. "Casey, can we talk for a minute?" His tone was friendly, but there was an underlying firmness that left her instantly alert. "Sure. I've noticed that you and Chloe are very close. It's natural. We spend many hours together daily." Oliver smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Yes, it's understandable, but you know, as the male figure in this house, I feel it's my duty to ensure that Chloe receives proper guidance." Casey kept her expression neutral, despite the internal alarm. "Guidance?" "Discipline, limits, respect for authority, things that, unfortunately, children raised only by mothers sometimes don't learn adequately." He paused, as if carefully choosing his next words. "Rachel is a wonderful mother, but tends to be too permissive. I believe Chloe needs a firmer structure." "From what I observe, Chloe is an extremely well-behaved and respectful child," Casey responded, maintaining a professional tone. "Rachel has done an incredible job alone." Something darkened in Oliver's gaze. "Exactly. Alone. But now there's a man in this house, and certain dynamics need to adjust." The silence that followed was charged with unspoken tension. Finally, Oliver resumed his cordial smile. "I just wanted you to know that I appreciate your work, but I hope you respect my position in Chloe's life. Some of your approaches, although well-intentioned, might be, let's say, interfering with the authority I'm trying to establish." "I understand," Casey responded simply, refusing to explicitly agree. "Great, have a good night, Casey." The message was clear. He saw her as a threat, and he was marking his territory. In the following days, Casey noticed subtle changes in the house's dynamics. Oliver began to appear more frequently during her working hours. He made a point of checking Chloe's homework, often criticizing small mistakes the girl made. He began to question routine decisions that Casey made, from the snack she prepared for Chloe to the time allowed for television. One afternoon, while helping Chloe organize her room, Casey found several drawings hidden under the mattress. In all of them, there was a large, dark figure with disproportionately large hands, always close to a small figure that clearly represented Chloe. In one of the drawings, the small figure was in a corner, huddled, while the large figure occupied almost the entire sheet. "Chloe, who are the people in this drawing?" Casey asked gently, showing the paper. The girl paled. "You weren't supposed to see that." "It's okay. I'm just curious." Chloe looked at the door, checking if they were really alone. "It's Uncle Ollie. He gets big when he's angry." "And does he get angry often?" An affirmative nod. "When I do things wrong." "What kind of things?" "When I talk too loudly. When I leave toys on the floor. When I take too long to respond. When I don't eat everything on my plate." She recited the list like someone who had memorized rigid rules. "He says that well-behaved girls are quiet and obedient." Casey felt a wave of indignation. "Chloe, we all make mistakes, that's normal, and you have the right to play, to talk, to be a child. But Uncle Ollie says that if I don't improve, Mommy will be sad, and he'll leave, just like my dad." The emotional manipulation was so evident that Casey had difficulty containing her reaction. She took a deep breath before responding. "Chloe, your mom loves you more than anything in the world. She would never be sad with you for being a normal child. And as for Uncle Oliver, well, people who really like us accept our mistakes and imperfections. That night, Casey couldn't sleep. The evidence of psychological manipulation was accumulating, but there was still nothing that could be considered concrete abuse. How to approach the subject with Rachel without seeming to be interfering in her relationship? How to protect Chloe without overstepping the boundaries of her role as a babysitter? She decided to start systematically documenting what she observed. In a separate notebook, she began to record concerning behaviors, phrases said by Chloe, changes in her behavior. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The Saturday of the dinner in Atlanta arrived. Rachel was radiant in a simple but elegant black dress, a gift from Oliver, as Casey discovered when Chloe excitedly commented about the special surprise that Uncle Ollie had brought for her mum. "You look beautiful, Mummy," Chloe complimented, looking admiringly at Rachel. "Thank you, my love. I promise not to come back too late." "Have fun," Casey said, trying to sound genuine despite the apprehension she felt. As soon as the couple left, Chloe visibly relaxed. They spent the night watching cartoons, making popcorn, and creating an improvised tent with sheets in the living room. It was as if, in Oliver's absence, Chloe returned to being the spontaneous and cheerful child that Casey had known in the beginning. When it was time to sleep, Chloe asked Casey to read a story, something that Oliver had recently forbidden, stating that 7-year-old girls should already read on their own. "Of course I'll read. Which story do you want?" "The one about the little fish who was afraid of the sea." While reading the story about a small fish that needed to overcome its fears to find its family, Casey noticed silent tears streaming down Chloe's face. "What's wrong, dear?" "Sometimes I'm afraid like the little fish," she confessed in a low voice, "especially when Uncle Ollie locks the door." Casey's heart froze. "What door, Chloe?" "Of my room. When I do something wrong, he says I need to stay alone to think about what I did, and he locks the door." "I'm afraid of the dark." "He leaves you locked up for how long?" "I don't know. It seems like a long time, until Mummy arrives sometimes." "And does your mum know about this?" Chloe shook her head negatively. "It's our secret. He says that Mommy wouldn't understand that it's for my own good." At that moment, Casey made a decision. She could no longer remain silent. She would have to find a way to talk to Rachel, regardless of the professional consequences. The couple returned around midnight. Oliver seemed especially animated, almost euphoric. Rachel, although smiling, showed some tiredness. "How was dinner?" Casey asked politely. "Wonderful," Oliver responded. Before Rachel could open her mouth, "And we have news to share." "Rachel, why don't you tell Casey?" Rachel smiled, a mixture of happiness and nervousness on her face. "Oliver proposed to me, and I accepted." The news hit Casey like a punch in the stomach. She forced herself to smile, to congratulate the couple, while her mind processed what this would mean for Chloe. "And there's more," Oliver continued, hugging Rachel by the waist. "I finally convinced this stubborn woman to accept my help to buy the house. We signed the preliminary papers yesterday." "That's wonderful," Casey managed to say, trying to sound sincere. "Chloe will be very happy with the news." "We'll tell her tomorrow at breakfast," Rachel explained. "I want to see her little face when she knows that now this house is really ours." On the way home, driving under the fine drizzle that fell over Charlotte, Casey felt the weight of responsibility crushing her shoulders. The situation had just become exponentially more complicated. With Oliver about to officially become Chloe's stepfather and co-owner of the house, his power over their lives would increase considerably. She needed to act. But how? What evidence did she have beyond children's drawings and subtle behaviors that could be explained in various ways? How to convince Rachel, clearly in love and grateful for the fairy tale she seemed to be living, that the Prince Charming could be, in fact, the villain of the story? The next morning, Sunday, Casey received a message from Rachel asking if she could come to their house for a special lunch. "We want to share the news with Chloe, and it would be important to have you present. She likes you so much," the message said. Casey promptly accepted, seeing in this an opportunity to observe the family dynamics under this new perspective. She arrived punctually at noon, finding the house decorated with balloons and a banner that said, "Our family, our home." Chloe came, running to hug her as soon as she entered. "Aunt Casey, guess what? Uncle Ollie is going to be my dad now, and this house is really ours." The girl's excitement seemed genuine, although Casey noticed an almost imperceptible tremor in her voice, as if she was rehearsing a reaction she knew was expected of her. "What wonderful news, Chloe. Are you happy?" The girl nodded emphatically, glancing sideways at Oliver, who was approaching with 2 glasses of champagne. "One for you, future wife." He handed a glass to Rachel, who was smiling radiantly. "And one for my new daughter's favorite, babysitter." He offered the other to Casey, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Casey accepted the drink but took only a sip out of politeness. She needed to stay alert. The lunch proceeded in a festive atmosphere, with Oliver dominating the conversation. He talked about plans to renovate the house, about the possibility of Chloe changing to an international school to have first-rate education, about the honeymoon he was planning as a surprise for Rachel. "And I thought we could redecorate Chloe's room," he commented between one bite and another. "That unicorn wallpaper is a bit childish, don't you think, Princess? A young lady like you deserves something more sophisticated." Chloe, who adored the colorful unicorns that decorated her room, just nodded silently. "But she chose that paper just 2 months ago," Rachel observed, slightly confused. "And it's already outdated. Children evolve rapidly. Isn't that right, Chloe?" The tone was soft, but there was an underlying firmness that made the girl quickly agree. "Yes, I'm already too big for unicorns." Casey noticed the dynamic with growing concern, with each small decision. Oliver subtly imposed his will, always with a smile, always with apparently reasonable arguments, and, more disturbingly, always obtaining the agreement of both. After dessert, a milk pudding that was Chloe's favorite, Rachel asked Casey to help her in the kitchen, while Oliver showed Chloe some children's decoration catalogues he had. "Brought. You're strange today," Rachel commented while they organized the dishes. "Any problem?" It was the opening that Casey had been waiting for. She took a deep breath, carefully choosing her words. "Rachel, have you noticed any change in Chloe's behavior recently?" "What do you mean?" "She seems quieter, more restrained, different from the Chloe I met in the first days." Rachel stopped, what she was doing thoughtful. "Well, she's adapting to many changes, new house, new school, new routine, and now Oliver becoming a father figure. It's natural that there's an adjustment period." "Of course," Casey agreed, trying not to sound confrontational, "but I've noticed that she seems particularly anxious to please Oliver, as if she's afraid of disappointing him." "Is that bad?" I mean, she respects his authority. That's positive, isn't it?" "There's a difference between respect and fear," Casey responded softly. "And some things that Chloe has mentioned worry me a little." Rachel's expression hardened slightly. "What things?" Before Casey could elaborate, Oliver appeared at the kitchen door, smiling. "What are you two talking so much about? Chloe has already chosen the theme for the new room, butterflies in pastel tones. Isn't that cute?" The opportunity was lost. Rachel smiled back, although Casey noticed a slight tension in her shoulders. "I loved the idea. Chloe has always liked butterflies." When Casey was preparing to leave, Oliver insisted on accompanying her to the car. Once out of earshot, his tone changed drastically. "I know exactly what you're trying to do, Casey." She kept her expression neutral. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You're trying to plant doubts in Rachel's head, insinuating things about my relationship with Chloe." His smile had completely disappeared, revealing a coldness that confirmed all of Casey's suspicions. "This needs to stop. My only concern is Chloe's well-being. Chloe is perfectly fine. What she needs is structure, discipline, and proper guidance, things I intend to provide as a father." He paused, taking a step closer. "You know, Casey, it wouldn't be difficult to find another babysitter, someone more aligned with my vision of education." The threat was clear. Casey felt a chill, but remained firm. "I'm sure Rachel would have something to say about that. Rachel trusts my judgment, especially now that we're committed and I'm financially responsible for this family." He smiled again, recovering his mask of cordiality. "Think of this as friendly advice. Focus on doing your job and leave family decisions to us." That night, Casey couldn't sleep. Oliver's veiled threat confirmed her worst suspicions, but also placed her in a delicate position. If she were fired, who would protect Chloe? How could she help if she were removed? On Monday, when she arrived to pick up Chloe from school, she found the girl unusually silent. "Did something happen, dear?" Chloe just shook her head negatively, but her eyes told another story. "You know you can trust me, don't you? For anything." The girl looked around, checking if they were alone in the car, and then whispered, "Uncle Ollie gave me a present last night after you left." "What present?" "A golden bracelet. He said it was for me to remember that now I'm his daughter too." She hesitated, biting her lower lip, "But I didn't like it." "Why not?" "Because he said that whenever I look at it, I should remember to be a good girl, not to make noise, not to tell secrets." Chloe lowered her voice even more. "And he said that if I lose the bracelet, he'll be very, very disappointed." Casey's stomach contracted. It was a classic form of control, a gift that functioned as a constant reminder of the vigilance and expectations imposed. "Where is the bracelet now?" "In my room. I didn't want to wear it today." "Chloe, does Uncle Oliver ever enter your room when you're not there?" The girl nodded. "Sometimes when we come back from school, things are in different places. My drawings disappear. The toys are organized in a way that's not how I left them." That was invasion of privacy, in addition to an extremely concerning, controlling behavior. Casey decided she could no longer wait. She needed to act concretely. That afternoon, while Chloe was taking a bath, Casey quickly checked the girl's room. The bracelet was there, on the nightstand, innocently shining under the lamplight. But what caught her attention were the drawings scattered on the table, new drawings all showing a happy family. A tall man, a smiling woman, and an obedient girl holding hands with both. The strokes were Chloe's, but the characteristic spontaneity of her previous drawings was missing. They seemed almost forced. When opening the drawer to put away some pencils that were on the table, Casey found something that made her blood freeze, a small wireless camera, discreetly positioned to capture the entire room. She closed the drawer quickly, pretending not to have seen anything. Her heart was racing. The invasion of privacy had reached a new and disturbing level. When Rachel arrived that night, Casey was determined to confront her, regardless of the consequences. She waited for Chloe to fall asleep and asked for a few minutes of conversation. "Rachel, I need to show you something." Casey opened her phone, showing photos she had discreetly taken of Chloe's concerning drawings in recent weeks. "Have you noticed any change in her drawings recently?" Rachel examined the images, frowning. "They're a bit somber, but children go through phases, don't they?" "And this?" Casey showed a photo she had discreetly taken of the camera in Chloe's room. "I found it in her room today." Rachel's expression changed from confusion to incredulity. "What is that, a camera in her room?" "Yes, and there's more." Casey then reported everything she had observed in recent weeks: Oliver's controlling behavior, the punishments that Chloe had mentioned, the bracelet and its implicit meaning, the changes in the girl's behavior. Rachel listened in silence, her face going through a sequence of emotions: surprise, denial, anger, and finally, deep concern. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" she finally asked, her voice trembling. "I tried several times, but there were always interruptions, and frankly, I feared you wouldn't believe me. Oliver is very convincing, and you two seem so happy." "He has been wonderful to me," Rachel admitted, confused. "Attentive, generous, romantic. How can he be the same person you're describing?" Manipulative people often show different faces to different people. The face he shows you is not the same that Chloe sees when they're alone. Rachel passed her hands over her face, clearly shaken. "I need to talk to Chloe, hear from her directly. I fear she's too scared to speak openly. Oliver has repeatedly emphasized the importance of family secrets." Rachel stood up abruptly. "I'm going to check her room right now. If that camera is really there." But it wasn't necessary. At that exact moment, Rachel's cell phone rang with an email notification. It was an anonymous audio sent from an unknown address. When they played it, they clearly heard Chloe's voice sobbing, begging for a door not to be locked, followed by Oliver's voice. Disobedient girls need to learn their lesson. Stay there until you learn to behave. And remember, if you tell your mother, she'll be very disappointed in you. The recording was unequivocal. Rachel paled, her hands trembling so much she almost dropped the phone. My God, how? Who sent this? Casey shook her head. I don't know, it wasn't me. Rachel seemed in shock, alternating between incredulity and horror. All this time, I didn't realize. How could I be so blind? He's manipulative, Rachel. People like that are experts at creating perfect facades. At that moment, they heard the sound of the front door opening. Oliver had arrived earlier than usual. Rachel, I'm home. His voice echoed down the hallway, perfectly normal, perfectly friendly. The two women looked at each other. The moment of confrontation had arrived, sooner than they expected, but inevitable. Oliver entered the living room, carrying a bouquet of flowers and a bottle of wine. His confident smile faltered momentarily upon noticing Rachel's expression and Casey's unexpected presence. What's going on here? He asked, his tone still light, but with a note of caution. Rachel stood up, facing him directly. Did you put our camera in my daughter's room? The direct question caught Oliver by surprise, but he recovered quickly. What are you talking about? Don't lie to me. I know about the camera, about how you've been treating Chloe when I'm not around, about the punishments and the threats. The mask began to fall. Oliver's smile disappeared, replaced by a cold expression that Casey immediately recognized, the true face that Chloe feared. I see that the babysitter has been busy, he commented, throwing a cutting look at Casey. Planting seeds of distrust, where they shouldn't exist. Don't try to deflect the subject, Rachel insisted, her voice firmer now. Explain the camera. Explain the audio I received. Audio? For the first time, Oliver seemed genuinely surprised. Rachel played the recording. His face hardened as the audio unfolded. That doesn't prove anything. It could have been manipulated, taken out of context. It's your voice, Oliver, and my daughter's voice begging not to be locked up. A tense silence established itself. Casey remained quiet, observing the confrontation, ready to intervene if necessary. Finally, Oliver spoke, his voice dangerously calm. I'm trying to help educate that girl. She needs discipline, structure, things that you, as a single mother, clearly haven't been able to provide adequately. The cruelty of those words hit Rachel like a slap. Get out of my house, she ordered, her voice trembling with anger. Now. Your house? Oliver laughed, a humorless sound. Forgot who's financing this place, who signed the purchase papers. Technically, this house is more mine than yours. The papers weren't finalized, Rachel shot back. And I'd rather go back to a tiny apartment than share a palace with someone who hurts my daughter. The confrontation was escalating. Casey, perceiving the danger of the situation, discreetly took her cell phone and began to record. Oliver noticed the movement. What do you think you're doing? He growled at Casey. Documenting, she responded simply. For everyone's safety. The presence of the camera seemed to disarm him momentarily. With a visible effort, Oliver recovered part of his composure. You two are exaggerating. I'm just trying to establish clear rules like any father would. If you can't understand that, maybe I should reconsider my plans for this family. He made air quotes when pronouncing the last word. Great, reconsider far from here, Rachel pointed to the door, and leave the keys. For a moment it seemed that Oliver would resist, but Casey's cell phone continued recording, and he was smart, enough to perceive when a strategic retreat was necessary. This isn't over, he warned, placing the keys on the table with unnecessary force. We have signed contracts, legal commitments. My lawyer will contact yours, Rachel responded firmly. Now get out. When the door closed behind him, Rachel finally collapsed on the sofa, trembling. How could I be so stupid? How did I not realize? Don't blame yourself, Casey approached, turning off the recording. He's manipulative. People like that are experts at showing only what they want us to see. But Chloe, my daughter, he was hurting my daughter right under my nose. At that moment, a subtle noise caught the attention of both. Chloe was standing at the entrance to the living room, hugging her cloth doll, eyes wide. "Is Uncle Ollie gone?" she asked in a small voice. Rachel opened her arms and Chloe ran to her embrace. "Yes, my love, he's gone and he's not coming back." "Promise?" "I promise. And I want you to know that you can tell me everything, anything. I'll never let anyone hurt you or scare you again. Never again." While mother and daughter embraced, Casey moved away discreetly, giving them privacy for that moment of reconnection. There was more to be done. The camera to be removed, possibly legal measures to be taken, and certainly a long process of emotional healing ahead. But the first and most important step had been taken. The truth had come to light, and Chloe was safe. The danger, however, rarely disappears without resistance, and Oliver didn't seem like the type of man who would accept defeat easily. The night that followed the confrontation was tense. Rachel, with Casey's help, checked the entire house for other cameras or listening devices. They found 2 more, one in the living room and another in the hallway that led to the bedrooms. The invasion of privacy was even more extensive than they had imagined. Chloe slept in Rachel's bed that night, clutching her cloth doll as if it were a protective talisman. The girl alternated between moments of relief and bouts of anxiety, as if she feared that Oliver could magically reappear at any moment. "He's not coming back, is he, Mummy?" she asked for the 3rd time, before finally falling asleep. "No, my love." "I promise he won't," Rachel repeated, stroking her daughter's hair until her breathing became regular and deep. Casey had offered to spend the night, sleeping in the guest room. Rachel readily accepted, grateful for the comforting presence of the babysitter, who in such a short time had become an indispensable ally. In the morning, Rachel called her boss asking for a few days of leave, something she rarely did. The situation required her full attention. There was much to resolve. Legal issues related to the attempted purchase of the house, the need to change the locks, and, most importantly, Chloe's emotional well-being. "I called a child psychologist," Rachel commented to Casey while they prepared breakfast. "Chloe was still sleeping, exhausted after the agitated night. I got an appointment for tomorrow." "Great initiative," Casey approved. "Chloe will need professional support to process all of this." "And so will I," Rachel admitted, rubbing her tired eyes. "I can't understand how I was so blind. All the signs were there." Manipulative people are experts at creating convincing illusions. Don't blame yourself for believing in the facade that Oliver so carefully constructed. Rachel nodded, although the guilt still weighed on her shoulders. "You know what's worse? A part of me still wants to believe there was a misunderstanding, that maybe he really thought he was helping, just in a misguided way." "That's normal," Casey responded gently. "Your brain is trying to reconcile 2 completely different versions of the same person. How could I have been so naive? An apparently perfect man appears out of nowhere, offering everything I've always dreamed of. I should have been suspicious immediately." "You weren't naive. You were hopeful. There's a big difference." The conversation was interrupted by the ringing of Rachel's cell phone. It was her lawyer, responding to the urgent message she had sent the night before. While Rachel spoke with him in another room, Casey noticed Chloe standing at the entrance to the kitchen, still in pajamas, hugging her inseparable doll. "Good morning, little one. Want some hot chocolate?" Chloe nodded, sitting at the table. "Is Mummy angry with me?" she asked in a low voice. "Of course not. Why would she be?" "Because I didn't tell about Uncle Ollie, about the things he did when she wasn't around." Casey sat next to the girl, gently holding her little hands. "Chloe, none of this was your fault. Adults sometimes do wrong things and scare children to keep secrets. Your mom understands that perfectly. She's just sad she didn't realize sooner." "Will he come back to get us?" The question, made with so much genuine fear, broke Casey's heart. "No, dear. He can't enter this house anymore. And today we're going to change the locks, just to make sure." Chloe seemed to calm down a little. While sipping her chocolate, she asked, "Can I put the unicorns back in my room?" Casey smiled. "Of course you can, and anything else you want. It's your space." When Rachel returned from the call, she seemed more centered, more determined. The lawyer said we have a solid case to void any contract related to the house, especially with the evidence of the hidden cameras and the audio. That's a relief, Casey commented. He also suggested I request a restraining order to ensure Oliver keeps his distance from us. I think that's prudent, Casey agreed. Chloe is still scared, asking if he'll come back. Rachel knelt beside her daughter, hugging her tightly. He won't come back, my love. I promise I'll always protect you. The morning went by with practical plans being made. A locksmith came to change all the locks. Rachel scheduled a deep sweep of the house to ensure there were no other hidden devices. Casey helped Chloe reorganize her room, removing the sophisticated decoration catalogs that Oliver had left and rescuing the old unicorn posters from the back of the closet. Early in the afternoon, the doorbell rang. Rachel and Casey exchanged apprehensive looks. It must be the lunch delivery I ordered, Rachel said, although her voice betrayed uncertainty. Casey accompanied Rachel to the door while Chloe remained in the room. Through the peephole, they saw a uniformed delivery person. Rachel opened the door cautiously. Delivery for Rachel Sanders, the young man announced, extending a medium-sized box. I didn't order anything besides lunch, Rachel hesitated. It has your name and address. Ma'am, need to sign here. After the delivery person left, they placed the box on the kitchen table, observing it with suspicion. There's no return address, Casey noticed. Rachel opened the box carefully. Inside was an envelope and a folder of documents. The envelope contained a handwritten letter. Rachel, I apologize for the misunderstanding yesterday. Perhaps I exceeded in my concern for Chloe, but I always had the best intentions. In the folder are all the documents related to the house. I transferred the property entirely to your name, without any burden or condition. Consider it a farewell. Forgift. I'm leaving Charlotte for a while. When emotions cool down, perhaps we can talk civilly. Oliver. Rachel checked the documents with trembling hands. They seemed authentic. A clean transfer of the property to her name, all papers properly signed and notarized. This seems too generous, she commented, suspicious. And completely out of character, considering the person we saw yesterday, Casey added. Rachel immediately called her lawyer, who promised to verify the authenticity of the documents. Meanwhile, the uneasiness persisted. Why would Oliver give up so easily? Why would he relinquish a valuable property without resistance? The answer came late in the afternoon, when Chloe, already more relaxed after a day without Oliver's oppressive presence, decided to organize her toys. Upon opening a decorative box she had received from him, she found a small metallic object she didn't recognize. "Mommy, what is this?" she asked, bringing the object to the living room. Rachel and Casey paled simultaneously. It was a storage unit, possibly containing all the images and audio captured by the hidden cameras. He never intended to leave peacefully, Rachel realized, horrified. This is a threat, a way of saying he still has power over us. They handed the device to the lawyer without checking its contents. He confirmed days later that it contained images of the house's interior and recordings of private conversations, enough material to cause great embarrassment if disclosed, although nothing explicitly criminal. The revelation gave Rachel and Casey the certainty that they needed to be extremely cautious. The restraining order was quickly issued, ensuring that Oliver should keep his distance from the family. The transfer of the house, surprisingly, proved to be legitimate, perhaps a last effort to preserve some positive image or simply a maneuver to avoid greater legal complications. The following weeks were dedicated to recovery. Chloe began therapy twice a week. Gradually, she returned to being the cheerful and curious girl she was before, although she still had moments of anxiety, especially at night. Rachel also sought professional help to process the psychological manipulation she had suffered. Over time, she began to identify the signs she had ignored, the small inconsistencies in Oliver's behavior that her enamored mind had rationalized. Casey continued working as Chloe's babysitter, but the relationship with Rachel evolved into a solid friendship. Together, they formed a support network that allowed Chloe to feel safe again. 1 month after Oliver's departure, while helping Chloe with a school project, Casey received an unexpected call. It was a woman named Melissa, Oliver's ex-employee. "I saw your name in a judicial process," Melissa explained. "I wanted you to know that you're not the first ones. He has a pattern." Melissa revealed that Oliver had done something similar with other women, always single mothers, always with young daughters. The pattern was consistent. He conquered the mother with grand gestures, gained access to the child, and then began the psychological manipulation. "We never managed to prove anything concrete," Melissa explained. "He's careful, never leaves. Clear evidence. But if you have the cameras and the recordings, sir..." "We do," Casey confirmed. "And would other women be willing to testify?" "Some, yes. Many are afraid. He's well connected, has influential friends." The information was a turning point. Rachel, initially reluctant to take the case forward publicly for Chloe's sake, realized there was a greater responsibility at stake. If they didn't stop him, Oliver would simply find another vulnerable family. With Melissa's help, they located other victims, 5 women in total, all with frighteningly similar stories. A clear pattern emerged. Oliver seemed to have a specific interest in controlling and manipulating children, using the mothers as a means of access. The case gained strength. A public prosecutor, sensitized by the extent of the predatory pattern, took on the process. The physical evidence of the hidden cameras, combined with the multiple testimonies, formed a solid case. Oliver, confronted with the possibility of a public scandal, decided to make a deal. He committed to leaving the country for a minimum period of 5 years and not contacting any of the families involved, under penalty of severe legal consequences. It wasn't complete justice, but it offered what Rachel and Chloe needed most: peace and the guarantee that he wouldn't return. 6 months after the fateful night of the confrontation, life had found a new balance. Chloe had returned to being a happy child, although more cautious with strangers. Rachel, now the legal owner of the house she had dreamed of, finally felt they deserved that space, not as a gift from a Prince Charming, but as a legitimate result of her own strength and resilience. On a sunny spring afternoon, while Chloe played in the garden planting the sunflowers she loved so much, Rachel and Casey observed from the porch. "You know what I learned from all this?" Rachel commented, watching her daughter with eyes full of love. "What?" "That true security never comes from outside, from a big house, from an upscale neighborhood, or from a seemingly perfect man. It comes from our ability to trust our instincts, to protect what really matters, and to recognize true allies when they appear." She smiled at Casey. "Like you." Casey returned the smile, feeling a deep gratitude for having followed her instincts. In those first days when the signs were still subtle, Chloe approached, carrying a freshly picked sunflower. "Look, Mummy, this one is for you." Rachel accepted the flower, embracing her daughter. "It's beautiful, my love." "And this one is for you, Aunt Casey." Chloe extended another sunflower, smaller but equally vibrant. "Because you helped us when we were afraid." Casey felt tears in her eyes as she accepted the flower. "Thank you, little one. You know, sometimes in life we meet people who seem good, but aren't, and other times we meet people who really care. The hard part is learning the difference." "How do we know?" Chloe asked with the curious wisdom of children. "People who really like you respect your feelings. They never ask you to keep secrets that make you feel bad. And most importantly, they love you exactly as you are. Unicorns, cloth dolls, and everything else." Chloe smiled, satisfied with the answer. She ran back to the garden where more sunflowers waited to be picked. Rachel observed her daughter, amazed at her capacity for recovery. "I think we're going to be okay, aren't we?" "I'm sure of it," Casey responded with conviction. "You two are the strongest people I've ever met." The sun was beginning to set over the Charlotte garden, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. A gentle breeze swayed the sunflowers, their faces stubbornly turned toward the light, even as the shadows began to lengthen. Like those flowers, Rachel and Chloe had learned to always seek the light, even in the darkest moments. And in that process, they discovered that true stability didn't come from secure walls or seductive promises, but from the courage to face the truth, however painful it might be, and from the wisdom to recognize the true allies in a journey that, after all, never needed to be solitary.